Hey, it's Ben, and I'm back with another episode of the Communicators. This is technically episode two. I don't know if it would officially be episode one because the first one was a teaser, but we'll go ahead and call it episode two. I am Ben Brugler, and I never realized how much I said until I watched the first one. So there we go. We'll probably say it a lot more times today. This second episode, if you're back, is about the communicators needing to understand the importance of listening. Yes, listening. We will get to that in a minute. If it's your first one, it's called The Communicators. There hasn't been many, so you haven't missed much. I hear it's the fastest growing podcast in America among 15-year-old girls named my daughter. So if it's not for her, we probably wouldn't see those big spikes in views and watches. Leah, love you. Glad you're listening. I do have a face for podcasts and a voice for podcasts, I've been told. So if you're listening to this just in audio, let me know because everybody was always like, you should be in radio. You should be doing this. And I never was in radio. And matter of fact, I hate the sound of my own voice. It was torture to watch that first episode. We don't have a sponsor yet. So if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I would really love to sponsor a podcast. As Mike Lawrence put it, my good friend Mike Lawrence, he said, I am the last member of the Gen X generation to have a podcast. So there's that. I have that going for me. So as I mentioned, today's episode is all about listening. I'm trying to keep these short. The first one, albeit just being a teaser, was only 8 minutes, 8 minutes and some change. This one may be around that. Still no guest. We will get into those. I promise we'll have some guests, but trying to build up just a start here and establish a little bit of a base as far as what it is we'll be talking about. This is not a professionals only podcast. This is not about applying listening to the workplace. This is not about applying communications to your job. This is about just the general fact that we are struggling to communicate right now. And I think a very important piece of that is we're struggling to listen right now. So, I mentioned we like to do we're going to bring this episode to you sponsored by a number. That's Sesame Street reference. Well, today's episode is brought to you by the number 85, as in 85% of misunderstandings are due to a lack of active listening. And that's from a market research firm called Gitnix. And I know I pronounced that wrong. It's spelled Gitnux. But when you're trying to sift through AI stats, it's hard to find the actual source. So I won't be putting any made up stats on here. So that one actually came from them. And it's really not that hard to believe that. Matter of fact, my wife would tell you it's probably 100%. So here's the thing. A quick aside. I got my wife an early Christmas present, and don't worry, she doesn't watch this or listen to it. She listens to me enough. And it's a shirt that was on Etsy, and it says, I'm telling you for the 15th time. And it's an amazing shirt because that is her life at home. One, she has to deal with me, and I am just terrible at listening, mainly to her. And she is also responsible for the heavy lifting with our two daughters, as she puts it, nagging at them to do the things that they probably should be doing. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything that you don't know if you don't have kids or a significant other, that it always does seem to be one that doesn't listen real well. And as I try to tell her all the time, I would probably do a better job of listening if I wasn't waiting for her to stop talking so I could talk. And that doesn't go over real well. But I should listen to her more because most of the time she's right. And it's probably more than most of the time, quite honestly. But she is right. And if we would just stop and listen, we could save ourselves a lot of headache and heartache and, maybe get some things done a little bit quicker. So let's talk about active listening. So what is active listening? So I actually looked up the definition, and there's a couple of different definitions, but and this is tough. So I don't know if you can do this or not, but just bear with me for a second. I'm going to read it to you. It's defined as the act of listening to understand, where you give the speaker your full attention instead of preparing to respond. So, again, the act of listening to understand rather than respond. And I don't know about you, but when I read that, I was like, oh, so just basic normal listening? Well, but it's not normal listening, because if it was normal listening, we wouldn't have these miscommunications and all these issues. So you're telling me I actually have to work to listen? I thought we were just having a conversation. I have to actually stop and listen and concentrate on what you're saying to me. Yeah, you do, because that's kind of the point when it comes to active listening, and really the sense of trying to communicate better, showing that you're listening to the person when they're talking. All these very basic things that we have lost sight of, and I'll get to that in a second, because you may not realize it's as bad as it actually is. Um, this idea of listening to understand is hard. And I recently read a book. It's not been recently now at this point, it's been a couple years, but the book is called Listen Like You Mean It. And it's a great book. It was featured on a HBR IdeaCast podcast, and it goes into explaining the different types of listening, and this whole point of like listening to understand versus listening to do something. The author talks about the issues that our brains go into when we're talking to somebody. And that is, we go into problem solving, for example. We want to give advice. And that happens a lot. Like you're halfway through the conversation, like, yep, I got something to say to this. I know exactly what we're going to do. And the person doesn't want your advice. They don't want you to solve their problem. 9 times out of 10, they just want to vent and be heard. It's hard when you're trying to manage. We will talk work stuff here too, but when you're managing in your professional circles, to do active listening, because you've been there and you want to go into solution mode, but you think back to how it was when you were the one having the issue. You had to solve it yourself. You have to figure it out. So instead of trying to solve it for the person, listen, understand, and be active. And that's in all our relationships, personal, with family and kids. I mean, you talk about hard active listening. You want to solve your kids' problems, but you have to let them finish, and you have to let them figure it out on their own. But knowing that you're there to listen is a huge deal. So if you're still listening to this and you want to avoid miscommunications, and you want insights on what it is to actually, how you can actually be practicing active listening, I have 3. And I am not an expert by any means. I'm a PR guy. So I do know a little something about communicating, but after years of being told I don't listen real well here at home, I have tried to actively improve that. So here's 3 that I have for you. The first, no devices. No devices of any kind at any time when you're actively listening, because if the definition is to listen to understand, you can't have your device in front of you. And trust me, from setting a fantasy football lineup to checking a text to doing anything that really in the grand scheme of things might be kind of pointless is compared to listening to the person, you got to put it down. You got to turn it over. Matter of fact, you got to walk away from it. The second, and this is just as hard, if not harder, don't have an opinion. You can't form an opinion because you're listening to understand. If you have an opinion, your view is now the one that you're listening to, not the other person. And that is so hard, because we're human. We listen and we get into it and we're like, oh, I can't wait to tell you this. I got a perfect example of what happened and what I did or what you should do, and you can't do that. And if you haven't noticed, a lot of opinions going around these days. So with so many opinions, how can we be listening? The third, more mechanical than anything. If you listen to the Mel Robbins podcast, she's excellent at this with her guests, but paraphrase back to show you understand. So she will stop midway. Let me see if I get this straight. You're telling me this, because of that. And sometimes that's a nice checkpoint. Sometimes it lets the person get their breath. Sometimes it does show it's like, no, actually that's not right. Hold on, that's not what I wanted you to take away there. So that third piece of fair paraphrasing and just making sure that you're understanding what the person is saying is huge. Those are the 3. So again, no devices, don't form an opinion, and paraphrase back, show you're listening. And really, the best thing to do to prepare for this. I had a leadership coach who helped me very early on get into the mindset of understanding the importance of active listening. And her secret, her tip to me was picture somebody who, in your mind, is a great active listener. Somebody that when you're talking to them, they are listening. You're not worried that they're running ahead or forming an opinion or distracted. And try to pretend or mimic or think what they would do in that situation where you are listening. And when I have done that, it has helped a ton to just get into the right mindset. And eventually you learn the habits and you kind of get into that. It's not saying it's going to happen every time. I still have to stop and check myself because I get excited or I get animated or I get worked up and I'm like, no, and people can see it on my face and I have to be like, okay, yep, nope, gotta let you finish. And that's very hard to do. But if we have something, I'm not saying it's going to be a switch we're going to flip, but if you're interested in trying to do that, try that tip. So why does this matter to us? We're the communicators. The world needs us. I keep saying that. It's really important. So why does this matter? Well, as I mentioned a minute ago, there's a lot of opinions going around. There's not a lot of active listening right now. And if we're just one person to stop and try to listen to understand, that's one person more than was doing it at the start of the conversation. A good friend of mine, Anthony Wright, he and I have had many conversations over the years about things going on in the world. DE&I is a big one that he and I talk about a lot. He has been a huge guide and mentor for me in that space. And one of the things he told me really kind of galvanized the idea of the one person mindset. He said, this conversation we're having right now, it's one-on-one. He's like, you feel energized, you feel like you could listen, you feel like you can maybe understand people's point of views. Take that into other conversations because you're never going to solve the issue on a mass level. But if you're one more person that's listening to understand rather than to argue or have an opinion or to tell somebody they're wrong, because if we're all listening to tell somebody we're wrong, then nobody can ever be right. And this isn't a wrong right situation. There's going to be debates, there's going to be discussions. This is a situation where we're just trying to listen to understand. So if that's the best thing we can take away from active listening, then I think it's worth a try. So that's really it. That's what I wanted to talk about today on the Communicators. As I started last time, we're going to end every episode with the red pen. So this week, the red pen. In the red pen, just as a reminder, if you haven't heard or if you're new, it's something that I just don't like. Like when I would get back my papers in college and there'd be that red pen crossing out my poorly written essay or my poorly written paper. This is the red pen. So I'm going to take a red pen today to these CEOs that are cheating. Every time I pick up a paper, yes, I pick up a newspaper once in a while, or I look at a headline. There's a story about somebody who's cheating. And yes, the Coldplay concert, that was funny. My kids thought that was hilarious. The kiss cam. But here's an idea. Don't do it. And it's not a situation of where you're mad you got caught. You might just be mad. How about you be mad you did it? So that's what we're taking the red pen to today. Enough with it. Let's stop it. I don't want to read anything. I don't want to read any more about it. So, okay, that's it for today. That's it for episode 2 of the Communicators. I hope you liked it. We will be back probably in about a week and a half with the 3rd episode. We will start getting into guests. I don't know if it'll be the 3rd episode or not, but I appreciate you listening. So thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day.